I'm Veronica Dudo. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, Vice President Vance meets with the Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers, what it means for the future of the Arctic territory. A Senate committee hearing focuses on the danger of abortion drugs. We're on Capitol Hill. Plus, papal artwork, a new mosaic of Pope Leo is unveiled. Can you guess where it will go? These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Felix of Nola. Our top story tonight. President Donald Trump declares the United States needs Greenland, adding it is vital for the Golden Dome he says is being built. Meanwhile, top White House officials meet with officials from Greenland and Denmark for talks in Washington. And while the president's push for Greenland intensifies, so does the pushback. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Veronica, good evening to you. President Trump said on Truth Social today that NATO is far more formidable with the U.S. in control of Greenland.
In the Oval Office, President Donald Trump tells reporters,
but we need it. You know, I'm not the first one. This was talked about by President Truman, and 40 years before President Truman they were talking about it. They've been talking about this for 100 years. This is not anything so new. A lot of people don't realize that.
Earlier, his Vice President J.D. Vance, seen here arriving at the White House, holding talks that lasted about an hour with Greenlandic and Danish officials.
We need it for national security, and that includes for Europe. And I spoke with, as you know, Mark, the head of NATO, and he really wants to see something happen. It's very important for national security.
The president earlier posting, NATO should be leading the way for us to get it. If we don't, Russia or China will, and that is not going to happen. President Trump also responded yesterday to Greenland's premier, who says the world's largest island prefers to stay with Denmark.
That's their problem. That's their problem. I disagree with him. I don't know who he is, don't know anything about him. But that's going to be a big problem for him.
The European Union's top official emphasized that Greenland's status cannot be decided by outside powers.
Greenland belongs to its people, so it's up to Denmark and Greenland, and only to them, to decide on matters that are concerning Denmark and Greenland.
France's foreign minister says Greenland is not for sale. He says the U.S. should stop what he describes as blackmail. And a member of Greenland's parliament explaining that Greenland wants to continue to be an ally of the U.S. as well as an ally of NATO and Denmark.
Greenland has been an ally of the U.S. since the Second World War. We're allies now, and we will stay allies in the future.
According to a new Quinnipiac University poll, about 9 in 10 registered voters oppose the U.S. trying to take Greenland by military force. Just 9% are in favor. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Retired Vice Admiral Robert Murrett of the U.S. Navy joins me now. He is currently a professor of practice at the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs. Thank you for your time.
Good to be with you, Veronica.
The 1951 Greenland Defense Agreement gave the United States almost unlimited access to defense facilities in Greenland. Recently, as we just heard, President Trump has renewed his belief that acquiring Greenland is necessary for national security. Could this become a reality?
I don't think we know yet. Hopefully this would result in some kind of a, understanding and agreement between the United States and Denmark and Greenland, the semi-autonomous territory that would take that into account. We already have major basing facilities on Greenland, a place formerly called Thule Air Base, and now has a new name, which I won't attempt to pronounce in Danish. But the relationship we have there is excellent, and we could have, I think, very easily had some additional facilities on Greenland, any number of places that they would have agreed to. I don't know if that necessarily means that we need to take over the island.
How does Greenland factor into the president's so-called Don Roe doctrine, aiming to assert American dominance in the Western Hemisphere by moving to push out bad actors like Russia and China?
Well, I think we have to be concerned about Russian and Chinese presence from a strategic standpoint in areas that are contiguous to the Western Hemisphere, in this case on the other side of Canada, which is noteworthy. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to take over any specific territory. I think we just need to engage with our allies, such as the Danish, who have been a stalwart member of NATO, who a lot of us during our military service have worked with so closely, and they've been so supportive of us. And I would hope that we'd be able to reach some kind of a reasonable person's agreement with them.
Now, we hear a lot about the point that the president has been saying that if the U.S. doesn't acquire Greenland, Russia or China will. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about China and Russia's objectives and presence in the Arctic and Greenland?
Yeah, the Arctic, just kind of step back a little bit, it's vital and more important than it used to be. And it's important, I think, to understand Greenland, is take a look at the world from what we call a polar projection. If you look at a Mercator projection, it makes it look like Greenland's the biggest continent in the Western Hemisphere. It's not. It's fairly small, but it does have a strategic area from a polar standpoint, and that's where so much more activity is taking place. And China and Russia are Arctic powers, so to speak. Their activity up there from the Northern Sea route and for some other considerations for rare minerals is important. But I don't think there's any danger that any reasonable person would say that either China or Russia are going to take over Greenland. I think that's something which is perhaps overstated.
Now, leaders from Denmark and Greenland, of course, travel to Washington, D.C. for a meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, this is happening while European powers, which include many NATO countries, have spoken out against the president's interest in Greenland. So clearly opposing views on this issue. What does it all mean for NATO?
I think for NATO, hopefully we'll be able to keep the connective tissue that we need to have for that vital alliance, which is very much in U.S. interest. The readout from the meeting today in Washington is that they have a fundamental disagreement, which is diplomatic talk for saying that they really didn't see things eye to eye on this issue. And moreover, as you said, there are 6 other European allies that have come to to provide support for Denmark and Greenland on this issue, and say what a lot of us would agree with. I think that it's really up to the people of Greenland and Denmark for what they want to do with the island, and not anybody else's.
Robert Merritt, thank you so much.
Good to be with you, Veronica. Have a good day.
A federal judge has declined to block the ongoing immigration crackdown in Minneapolis despite a lawsuit from Minnesota's Attorney General. The ruling comes as the city continues to deal with the aftermath of the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent. According to DHS, that agent suffered internal bleeding to his torso when he was struck by Good's vehicle during the incident. Local officials had argued that the federal surge is unconstitutional and creates public panic. However, the court's decision allows the enforcement operations to continue. This comes as Minnesota is experiencing a wave of resignations within the U.S. Attorney's Office, where at least 5 prosecutors have stepped down.
We're doing the right thing. We're going to keep with it, and they can protest all they want. We're just going to double down and enforce the law. And I said for months, we're going to surge resources in sanctuary cities because that's where the problem is. We know they're releasing public safety threats. We're going to send the agents where we know the biggest problem.
Some personnel at America's largest base in the Middle East are being urged to leave as tensions between Iran and the U.S. continue. About 10,000 U.S. troops are stationed at the air base in Qatar. The directive to leave comes after President Trump threatened to take military action in support of protesters in Iran. Meanwhile, the Iranian government says detained protesters face speedy trials and executions. The demonstrations began in late December and quickly spread to over 100 cities and turned deadly. So far, it's believed at least 2,400 protesters have been killed. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa, is weighing in on the unrest in Iran, expressing his hope that the violence ends soon.
My reading is that we see how the desire of life, dignity and justice is inside the heart of any human being. The people there are suffering since a long time, and now this desire exploded in them. I hope this will not conclude in more violence and more bloodshed, but of course no one can deny or neglect for too long this desire that is a part of the identity of each person and each community.
Farhad Rizai is a political scientist specializing on Iran. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
President Trump says he has it on, quote, good authority that the killings in Iran have stopped. Do you believe this?
I don't believe that the regime really stopped the killing. They might stop temporarily because of the pressure that President Trump imposes, because of the threats that President Trump will attack. But this is just for deceiving the international community, for deceiving President Trump. But in reality, they will not stop killing of protesters. As you may know, so far they have killed over 12,000 protesters. According to some other estimates, they actually killed close to 20,000. And I don't think they will stop in that, because there are reports that they brought in the Shia militia, Hashd Shabi in Iraq, the Shia Afghan who fought in Syria, and Hezbollah forces in Lebanon. So they brought them in for a purpose, and I don't think that they're going to stop killing.
So the comment was made today in the Oval Office during an event, and the president was then pressed saying, well, how will we know this? And he said we wouldn't see body bags. Do you think that this could still be something that moves forward with the president threatening some type of military action?
The obvious reason that we don't see body bags anymore, it's because there is a blackout in Iran. The regime completely shut down the internet. There is no way that we can get in touch with inside Iran. Even they managed, with the help of Chinese, to shut down the Starlink. So there is no way that we can make sure that the killing hasn't stopped. One reason, obviously, is just because of the blackout. So I believe the U.S. military intervention is a must. For now, it is required, first of all, because of the moral responsibility of President Trump and the United States. He promised Iranians to go to the street and fight the regime, and he will come to their rescue. So far, that promise has not been fulfilled. And I think it is the moral responsibility of the United States to go to the rescue. I mean, this is something American. When you promise, you have to fulfill. So the U.S. military intervention at this time is required because it will empower protesters and it will also weaken the regime. By the way, it's not going to be in the form of ground invasion and boots on the ground. It's not necessary. There are other ways that are more effective, like cyber operations and electronic warfare, the strikes on those bases who are in charge of repression. And I think President Trump has to do that. Let's not forget that this is the golden opportunity for the United States, because the regime is weakened, its power base is weakened, and it's the time for the United States to put an end to 47 years of proxy wars and terrorism and everything. This is a golden opportunity, and President Trump should not lose it.
Do you think Iran's regime could topple?
Well, it is possible, of course. The regime, let me put it this way. The regime now is a zombie regime. It is zombie, but economically it is zombie. It's dying. Politically it's dying. Socially it's dying. And its supreme leader is also dying. So the way that people call it a zombie regime, it's because it's dying in every possible way, but it's only the lethal force of the regime is still working. And once President Trump uses military power to degrade the regime as it is now, it is possible, yes, the regime collapse is possible more than any time in the past.
Farhad Rezai, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
The Department of Health and Human Services has restored millions of dollars in funding to Planned Parenthood as the American Civil Liberties Union drops a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the withheld funds. The administration initially froze family planning grants for Planned Parenthood in March of 2025 as part of its crackdown on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. But after review, the funds were restored in December, and the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. requested that the case be voluntarily dismissed. Both the president and his secretary, RFK Jr., denied knowing about the released funds. Should mail-order abortion drugs be legal? Senators debated that question on Capitol Hill today in a Health Committee hearing. The discussion comes against the backdrop of a larger debate among regulators and medical experts regarding the safety of these drugs approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with the latest. Eric.
Great to see you, Veronica. Right now, legal challenges are taking place across the country from pro-life groups about these abortion pills being distributed by mail. Recent data shows that these drugs may cause major serious complications in nearly 11% of pregnant women who use it. Now, pro-life lawmakers like Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who is a medical doctor, wants the FDA to immediately suspend mifepristone in all of its generic forms, as the FDA conducts its own evaluation of the risks. At the very least, Senator Cassidy tells me that he wants women to be required to see a doctor in person before using any of these drugs.
It was stopped under the Biden administration. Ideally, this administration would restart it. That's important because there's some women at higher risk for complications for whatever reason, and the doctor interviewing her would be able to see that.
Dr. Ubenhorst, is that standard of care? No human contact to prescribe a medication like this?
I would say it's irresponsible. For example, if I had a pregnant woman who came in with a bladder infection and I just talked to her on the phone and prescribed an antibiotic, that would be malpractice.
Prior to the hearing, I spoke with Louisiana's Attorney General, one of the witnesses. She says part of the problem, anyone can get on the internet and order these pills, no questions asked.
It's dangerous, it's illegal, and it's medically unethical, and I cannot think of a single situation that's comparable. This is not health care. These are not medical professionals. They are activists, and it's dangerous to women.
She is now pushing to extradite doctors from California and New York for mailing abortion pills. Democrats claim the hearing is not about safety of mifepristone or women who use it.
It is about the ongoing effort of my friends in the Republican Party to deny the women of this country the basic right to control their own bodies.
Over the past 25 years, medication abortion using mifepristone and misoprostol has been rigorously studied and proven safe and effective in over 100 high-quality peer-reviewed studies.
Studies show over 60% of abortions are from mail-order pills. Other Democrats flooded social media today questioning the motive of the hearing.
It's not because they care about women's health. It is because medication abortion using mifepristone is the most common method of abortion in the U.S. And Trump and his anti-abortion allies want to ban abortion nationwide.
Some claim the Trump-Vance administration isn't doing enough to protect life. They highlight that the FDA's recent approval of the new generic form of the drug mifepristone, and just last week, President Trump asked Republican lawmakers to be more flexible about the Hyde Amendment during negotiations over extending Obamacare subsidies. By the way, the Hyde Amendment is a long-standing provision that bans federal funds for abortions, and we as Catholics know that the U.S. bishops remain steadfast in its position that abortion is grave moral evil. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Prayers for peace. A surprising number of Christians consider leaving the Holy Land. What the President of Israel discussed with Christian leaders. And how recent retail sales have surprised economists' expectations. We have the numbers. Welcome back. The United States says it has launched the second phase of President Trump's ceasefire plan for Gaza. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff posted on X that Phase 2 establishes a transitional technocratic Palestinian administration in Gaza. It will oversee day-to-day affairs. He also says Phase 2 begins the full reduction of forces as well as the reconstruction of Gaza. Witkoff added that the U.S. expects Hamas to comply fully with its obligations or face serious consequences. No further details about a new transitional administration were provided. Additionally, the White House has not yet commented publicly on the matter. However, Witkoff says the U.S. expects Hamas to immediately return the final dead hostage as part of its obligations under the deal. During Pope Leo XIV's recent talks to members of the diplomatic corps, he warned that human rights and freedoms are under strain as diplomacy gives way to the logic of power and war, naming various global conflicts, including the Holy Land. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Valentina Di Donato has more.
You see this in the Holy Land, where despite the truce announced in October, the civilian population continues to endure a serious humanitarian crisis adding further suffering to that already experienced. The Holy See is especially attentive to any diplomatic initiative that seeks to guarantee to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip a future of lasting peace and justice in their own land, as well as to the entire Palestinian people and the entire Israeli people.
Amidst the ongoing violence and bloodshed in the Holy Land, Pope Leo XIV recently spoke to diplomats at the Vatican, reiterating the Holy See's full willingness to support any initiative that promotes peace and harmony in the world. This week, the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, met with Christian leaders at a time when visions for the region vary greatly.
Just a few months ago, I had the opportunity to meet His Holiness, Pope Leo XIV, in Rome. We discussed then what I repeat here now. It is the sacred obligation of all who believe in the God Almighty to reject hatred, to affirm the divine image in each and every person, and to build bridges across religious and political divides.
The annual Rossing Report, prepared by the Rossing Center, an organization for peace and interreligious dialogue, has for years monitored the violence against Christians living in Israel and Palestine through its Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations program. And they documented 111 attacks of violence against Christians and clergy in Israel and eastern Jerusalem. This included vandalism against churches, monasteries, as well as violence and harassment against Christians. The survey also found that almost half of Christians under 30 want to immigrate from Israel.
I have been following with concern the data, dear friends, that suggests that many young Christian families are considering leaving the Holy Land. Some have left already. Their departure deeply saddens me because Israel is their home, just as it is my home and yours.
At the start of the new year, the Latin parish of Taipei, which is the last full Christian community in Palestine, published a memorandum. The document that was sent to the diplomatic missions outlines the deteriorating humanitarian conditions and legal situations in the town. It also summarized a series of attacks by Israeli settlers on residents in the town. Examples included vandalizing vehicles that belonged to residents, as well as harassment and intimidation, recurring closure of checkpoints, and ultimately creating an atmosphere of fear. The result, the memorandum publishes, is that families and individuals have been forced to leave over the course of the last 2 years. In a recent Vatican News interview, Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa explained the current state of affairs on the ground in the Holy Land.
But there is not the active war. But people keep dying not only because of cold, but also because of lack of medicines and drugs. Antibiotics and all the basic medicines are still missing. They are a big problem. And the situation remains of total devastation.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
A new report shows U.S. retail sales in November beat the expectations of many economists. According to the report, sales rose 0.6%. The released numbers are late due to the government shutdown and have not been adjusted for inflation. Still, they show an improvement over retail sales in October. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, a call for more. Pope Leo reflects on De Verbum and what it means for our relationship with Christ. Plus, a new Mosaic portrait of Pope Leo is unveiled at the Vatican. The Department of Homeland Security has issued a new rule easing visa restrictions for religious workers, bringing relief to Catholic parishes and faith communities nationwide. The interim rule allows priests, nuns, and other religious workers to return to the U.S. without waiting a full year abroad after reaching their 5-year visa limit. DHS says the change protects religious freedom and prevents disruptions to essential ministry services. The rule supports President Trump's executive order establishing the White House Faith Office and addresses long visa backlogs that left parishes without clergy. The change takes effect immediately, with public comments open for 60 days. Pope Leo continues his catechesis series on the Second Vatican Council and explains that its document on divine revelation calls us to friendship with Christ.
Ma si alimenta dello scambio di parole vere.
At the weekly talk, the Holy Father focused on De Verbum, the Council's document which speaks of the coming of the Son in human flesh, and he noted that the text recalls Jesus' invitation for us to be his friends. The Pope explained that in Jesus, God makes us sons and daughters and calls us to become like him. The Holy Father stressed that this is why prayer, meditation, and reflection are so important, so that we can live and cultivate friendship with the Lord. By welcoming and caring for this relationship, Pope Leo insisted that the faithful will discover that friendship with God is our salvation. Ahead of that general audience, Pope Leo's Mosaic portrait was revealed to the Pope himself. The Mosaic medallion was completed by the Vatican Mosaic studio and will be installed in the Papal Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls tomorrow. There it joins the portraits of all the popes since St. Peter. EWTN News will attend the installation and provide a full report tomorrow right here on News Nightly. We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.